The early September sun slanted through the old live oaks of Maplewood Park, spilling dappled gold across the winding paths that curled around the lilied pond. Charleston's air hung warm and heavy, tasting faintly of salt and summer, a softness that clung to skin and slowed footsteps. Families drifted along the sidewalks, strollers squeaking, cyclists coasted by in quiet pairs. A far-off fountain whispered over the shuffle of jogger shoes. Officer Maya Bennett let the rhythm of the park settle. Into her shoulders as she walked, her K-9 partner, a sleek German shepherd named Ranger. His black and tan coat caught the light in sharp angles. His sears tracked the world like twin satellite dishes. They weren't on a hot call, just a late-afternoon patrol loop to keep an eye on the green space to be seen and, if needed, to be found. Rares's pace, checked. A single pause. Then stillness. Maya felt the leash grow taut just a hair. "What is it, buddy?" she murmured. Rares's body aligned, ears forward, nose lifted, gaze pinned across the water toward a quiet bench, half screened by reeds and a drooping willow. Maya followed the line of his stare. There, a small figure sat perched on the far edge of the slatted wood, feet not reaching the ground. A girl, 8 maybe. Her auburn hair a tangle that veiled most of her face. An oversized knit cardigan swallowed her frame. A scarf hung loose at the collar despite the heat. Thin mittens wrapped her hands. Maya's chest tightened the way it did when something wasn't right, but hadn't yet named itself. Ranger didn't bark. He didn't whine. He simply watched, alert, deliberate, as if bracing for the smallest signal. "Okay," Maya said softly, shifting her stance without hurry. The park hummed on around them. Laughter, bicycle bells, the sig of wind. Through leaves. But for Maya, the sound thinned to a line. She touched the radio at her shoulder, then let her hand fall. "Let's go say hello," she told Ranger, and together they moved toward the bench. The dog leading with a patience that felt like carry. Maya approached from an angle that wouldn't startle, letting Ranger set the pace. His steps were measured, his leash loose in her hand. The girl's head stayed bowed, hair slipping forward like a curtain. "Hi there," Maya said gently, keeping her voice low and even, the way she did with skittish animals and anxious kids. "I'm Maya. This is Ranger." No reaction, not a flinch, not a glance. Ranger stopped a few feet away, sitting with a deliberate slowness. His head tilted, ears relaxed but forward, eyes steady on the girl. It was a look Maya had seen in him during rescues. Curiosity, threaded with caution. The girl's fingers tightened on the edge of the bench. Beneath the wool, the knuckles pressed pale against the fabric. "You okay, sweetheart?" Maya tried again. "Do you need some water?" Still nothing. Only the faintest shift in her posture when Ranger leaned slightly toward her, sniffing the warm air. For a heartbeat, her gaze flicked sideways, just enough for Mia to catch a glimpse of green eyes before they dropped again to the ground. Maya felt a quiet weight settle in her chest, the kind that came when instinct whispered a truth you didn't want to hear. This wasn't shyness. It was distance-built, practiced, and heavy with purpose. She reached for her radio, thumb hesitating only a second before pressing the button. "Dispatch, Unit K93. I've got a juvenile female, approximately 8 years old, non-responsive but alert, requesting another unit to Maplewood Park, North Pond." Ranger didn't look away from the girl. Neither did Maya. The park's late-afternoon calm shifted suddenly as the sound of approaching footsteps broke through the ambient home. Officer David Morales came into view, his patrol vest catching bits of sun through the trees. At 40, with a grounded, steady presence, David carried the sort of quiet authority that could ease most tense situations. Maya stepped aside just enough for him to take in the scene. The small figure on the bench. Ranger seated close, but not crowding her. "She hasn't said a word," Maya murmured, alert but withdrawn. Clothing's wrong for the weather. Ranger zeroed in on her, before I even noticed. David nodded once, then crouched to the girl's level, careful to keep a respectful distance. "Hey there," he said softly. "You okay? Do you know where your parents are?" No response. Switching seamlessly, he signed a simple hello in ASL, adding, "What's your name?" The girl's gaze didn't lift, her hands motionless in her lap. Ranger shifted, forward slightly, nose hovering near her mittened hands. She didn't pull away, just watched him from the corner of her eye. Maya caught the look. "She's tuned into him," she said quietly. "That's the only movement I've seen." David straightened. "We need to get her somewhere safe. She might be nonverbal or just can't talk right now." At the word station, the girl's shoulders tightened, her grip on the bench deepening. Before Mia could speak, Ranger eased down onto the grass beside her, curling just enough to touch her leg with his flank. It was a break from protocol, but Mia didn't stop him. The girl's grip loosened a fraction. It was enough. "Let's keep it slow," Maya said. "We'll ride together." Ranger 2, David met her eyes and nodded. They both knew trust had just taken its first fragile route. The air inside the Charleston Police Department was cool and still, a sharp contrast to the heavy warmth of the park. Fluorescent light hummed quietly overhead as Maya guided the girl through the lobby, Ranger padding close on her left. At the intake desk, Officer Liam Harris looked up from a report. Mid-30s, sharp-eyed but approachable, Liam had a gift for connecting with people in difficult moments. He noticed immediately how the girl's body angled toward Ranger, using him as a barrier between herself and the unfamiliar room. Maya kept her tone low, found her alone on a bench by the north pond. "No verbal response, but she's engaged with Ranger. Dispatch has a welfare check report open." Liam nodded and gestured toward a quieter conference room. Inside, the overhead lights were softer, the airless busy with movement and noise. Ranger settled on the carpet near the girl's feet as Liam crouched a few steps away. "My name's Liam," he said, both speaking and signing. "Can you tell me your name?" The girl stayed still, gaze locked on her lap. Ranger inched forward, lowering his head until his nose hovered just above the girl's mittened hands. He drew in a slow breath, then nudged gently at the wool with the tip of his nose. When she pulled her hands back a fraction, he only adjusted, circling slightly to come at them from another angle. It wasn't a single curious sniff. It was repeated, deliberate, each touch of his muzzle carrying a quiet insistence. He'd pause, glance briefly at Maya, then return to the mittens as though trying to say, "There's something here." The girl's fingers curled inward, pressing against the fabric as if to keep whatever was underneath hidden. Ranger persisted, his nudges still soft but unyielding, the steady rhythm of his breathing brushing warm through Thayarn. Finally, the edge of one mitten caught against the other, shifting just enough for the wool to ride up. A pallid strip of skin appeared, and with it the mark, a faint, narrow bruise circling her wrist, too even, too precise to be from a playground fall. Maya caught Liam's eyes. No words passed, but the meaning was clear. This wasn't just a case of a lost child. "Let's stay here for a bit," Maya said softly. "No rush." She pulled out her notebook but didn't open it, choosing instead to let Rare's steady presence fill the silence. The steady quiet of the conference room was broken by the echo of brisk footsteps in the hallway. A moment later, the door to the main area swung open, and a tall man in a tailored suit strode inside. His dark hair was combed to precision, his shoes polished to a mirror shine. "I'm looking for my stepdaughter," he announced, his voice carrying enough to turn a few heads at nearby desks. "Emily Kane. I was told she's here." The moment the girl heard him, her spine went rigid. Her small frame seemed to draw inward, shoulder-skirling, as if to make herself smaller. Ranger rose instantly, positioning himself between her and the door, head low but steady. Maya stepped out into the lobby, intercepting the man before he could enter the conference room. "Sir, I'm Officer Bennett, and you are Victor Kane," he said quickly. "Her stepfather." She wandered off at the market, gave me the scare of my life. She's probably terrified right now. She's always been a shy kid. Maya's gaze was level. Victor's smile tightened. She's afraid of big dogs. Always has been. "That's not what I've seen today," Mia said evenly. He shifted on his feet, a flicker of irritation slipping past his polished demeanor. Liam appeared at Mia's shoulder, catching her glance. "Why don't we get some quick paperwork handled first?" Liam suggested to Victor. "Before you see her. Standard procedure." Victor's jaw worked, but he forced a nod. "Fine." As Liam led him toward a side desk, Maya slipped back into the conference room. Emily hadn't moved from her seat. Ranger still stood between her and the doorway, watchful, silent, unyielding. With Victor out of sight, the air in the conference room seemed to ease, though Emily's gaze stayed fixed on the table. Ranger sat close enough that his flank touched her knee, his breathing steady and slow. Mia crouched to Emily's level. "You're safe here," she said softly. "No one's going to make you leave with someone you don't want to." Emily's eyes flicked to the door, then back to Ranger. She shifted slightly, her mittened hands fidgeting in her lap. Then deliberately she made a small movement, fingers crossed, palm inward, dragging downward. Maya paused. The gesture was precise, but unfamiliar. Before she could ask, Ranger's head snapped up. His ears pry-cricked, and he gave a sharp singular bark, deep, authoritative, the kind he used in training when marking a find or alerting to trouble. Ma's pulse quickened. "What is it, boy?" The dog barked again, glancing between Emily and Maya, his gaze intent. The dog barked again, glancing between Emily and Maya, his gaze intent. Liam, hearing the bark from the hallway, stepped in. "Everything all right?" "She just made some kind of hand sign," Maya said quickly. Ranger reacted like it meant something. Liam's eyes shifted to Emily. "Can you show me again?" Emily hesitated, then repeated the movement, fingers crossed, palm in, pulling down. Recognition flickered in Liam's eyes. "It's a sign for help," he said quietly. "Not exactly the standard ASL version, but close enough." Emily's eyes brimmed, the tears gathering until they trembled on her lashes. For a heartbeat, she stayed utterly still, as if afraid the moment might shatter if she moved. Then one tear broke free, tracing a slow path down her cheek. Her lips parted, but no sound came, only the quick, uneven pull of her breath. It wasn't the relief of someone who felt instantly safe. It was the fragile, aching relief of being seen after too long in the shadows. The knowledge that the sign she dared to make, the one she'd prayed someone might understand, had been recognized, that the fear choking her voice hadn't erased her entirely. Ranger seemed to sense it, too. He pressed his shoulder into her side, his head lifting so his muzzle brushed her arm, a silent promise in the steady weight of his presence. Maya exhaled slowly, the truth settling like cold weight in her chest. Tialasti. Dog had understood before any of them had, and now there was no mistaking it. This wasn't a misunderstanding or a child's game. Emily was asking to be saved. Liam straightened from his crouch after confirming the sign. He gave Maya a pointed look. "I'll talk to him," he said quietly before slipping out into the hallway where Victor waited. Maya stayed with Emily, keeping one hand on Rear's collar, but letting him remain pressed against the girl's side. Through the glass panel, she could see Liam meeting Victor near the desk. Victor's voice carried just enough to reach the room. "I want to see her now. You can't keep her from me." Liam's tone was measured. "Mr. Kane, we're following procedure. There are visible injuries that we need to document, and CPS has been contacted." Victor scoffed. "She's clumsy. Always has been. You're wasting time." Maya opened the conference room door, stepping into the conversation. Clumsy doesn't leave uniform finger marks around both wrists, she said evenly. And it doesn't explain why she just asked us for help. Victor turned sharply toward her. She doesn't. No sign language. She's making it up. Ranger appeared at Ma's side, blocking Victor's direct line of sight into the room. His ears were forward now, his body still but coiled with purpose. The desk sergeant approached, calm but firm. Mr. Kane, until CPS arrives, Emily will remain here. You can wait voluntarily or in an interview room. Your choice. Victor's smile was thin, his eyes flicking past Maya toward the shadow of Emily behind Ranger. She'll regret this, he murmured, just loud enough for Maya to hear. Maya didn't blink. No, she said quietly. She won't. At her side, Ranger held his stance, his steady presence, making clear the girl wasn't alone anymore. Victor was led toward the interview rooms, his voice still carrying faint protests down the hallway. Only when the door shut behind him did Mia feel the tension in the conference room shift. Emily's shoulders lowered a fraction, though her hands stayed locked in her lap. Ranger gave Asmal huff as if confirming the threat was gone before settling beside her again. The door to the small exam room clicked shut, muting the low murmur of the station beyond. Dr. Sofia Rivera, a pediatrician with years of experience working with trauma cases, offered Amelia a warm, steady smile. "It's just us in here," Dr. Rivera said softly. Ranger lay on the floor beside the exam table, his head resting on his paws, but his eyes tracking every movement. Emily Shand stayed in his fur, fingers absently curling and uncurling. Maya stood to one side, letting Dr. Rivera work. The exam was slow, deliberate, lifting a sleeve here, gently pressing along a forearm there. Beneath the heavy cardigan, the injuries told, their own story. Bruises in different stages of healing, clear finger-shaped marks and small circular burns. "These aren't from accidents," Dr. Rivera said quietly to Maya, her expression tightening. "This is sustained abuse." Mia's jaw flexed. She glanced at Emily, who avoided her eyes, but didn't move away when Dr. Rivera checked her wrists. When the exam ended, CPS caseworker Priya Patel stepped into the room, a file tucked under her arm. "Given how quickly she's bonded with you and Ranger," Priya said, "I'd like to place her with you under emergency care pending a full review. It'll keep her somewhere she feels safe." Maya didn't hesitate. "She can have my spare bedroom and Ranger's not going anywhere." Emily's gaze lifted just slightly at those words. The tension in her shoulders loosened, and for the first time since Maya had found her, a flicker of relief crossed her face. Ranger shifted closer, laying his head in her lap as if sealing the agreement. A cold December sun spilled over Maplewood Park, the pond edged with a thin shimmer of frost. Emily, now 9, wore a teal jacket. Her cheeks flushed from the chill. She laughed as Ranger bounded after a tennis ball, his paws thudding softly on the grass. It had been 3 months since that late summer day on the park bench. Emily had been living in Maya's small Charleston home under CPS emergency placement. Her case now, moving toward permanent guardianship. Victor Kane faced multiple charges and remained in custody. There was no other family stepping forward. Maya had become the center of Emily's new life. Emily turned to run back toward Maya, slowing only to slip a hand into her jacket pocket. She drew out a small plush German shepherd, the one Maya had given her, the first night, and held it for a second before tucking it away again. Here Yez drifted to a bench under the willow by the pond. For a brief moment she lingered on it, then looked back to Maya. The distance between that day and this one felt measured in more than time. Maya crouched as Emily approached, letting Ranger nudge between them, tongue lolling, eyes bright. The three of them stood together, framed by winter sunlight. Some rescues began with a cry for help. Others began in silence hurriedly by a dog who refused to walk.